the sense sphere. You must listen to our demands.
Well, you saw a snippet there, me at the conventions, because we're going to mention conventions today. I say conventions, tours and all the rest of it, and seeing our stars. So good to see you, everybody. Let me get myself sorted out, me. Not Mr. Technical, am I? So it's Thursday. It's midday in the UK. I'm thinking, was it 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock in Australia? Welcome to the Doctor Who Detox Hour show, which never ends up being an hour, I know, with a forensic focus on the 7th Doctor, Sylvester McCoy. We did our time flash focus on Remembrance of the Daleks last night with some serious discussion about some of the Dark Doctor, for example, whether it's more interesting to do it now. We discussed what would Shooty's Doctor do, of course we did, and whether it was one of those classic political ones with lots of subtleties all the way through. Look, we are churning out these streams like nobody's business. We're like a Brisbane sweatshop in here, so click on your likes, make sure those notifications are on so that you know that, oh, he's on again. He's on again. What's he doing? There'll be a midday show tomorrow, really detailed topic. There's people out there. I've seen my analytics. Half of you haven't done a subscription. You are truanting. You are just watching without. Right, I sort that out now, Mr. Business here. So please give us a subscription. The best ways of contacting me tend to be, and I tell you what, I'm getting many, many more people writing to me on X at Sense the Sphere. DM me there, or on Gmail, Sense the Sphere. That works really well too. Now, I need to bring on my guests, and so let's get Cybermat Strikes on in Sydney. Hello.
Howdy, Brendan. Howdy, audience.
Yeah.
How's things going?
What time is it there then? Am I right? 9 o'clock?
9 o'clock in the evening.
On the dot. Let's see if it's the same in Tassie. Hello.
G'day. It is 9 o'clock here too.
9 o'clock, yeah. Sometimes I feel as though I'm never quite on the ball on that one because I've got to contact my Adelaide relatives, and I'm never quite sure. Is it the same as Melbourne? It's normally half an hour across, isn't it? I think
half an hour.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we talked about family and detox, and actually we might be talking about some of these actors in front of us here. But when you look at all the celebrities and the actors, they do seem to all pretty much get, they know each other so well, don't they? It is family.
It is, and having had a few things to do with these actors on the screen, I know that they talk about everything that goes on. So nothing really gets by these guys. They know everything.
Yes.
All the goss.
Yes. Who are the bad streams? Who are the good streams? Who are the good people to talk to? Who are not? And of course, life. I'm sure of life. On family front, somebody who really looked after his family very well, and good for him, is Terry Nation, and he would have been 94 today. It says, as people say now on Facebook and everything, it says heavenly birthday. But I mean, has anyone got a go-to story with Terry Nation or Terry Nation's legacy that touched you?
I have a love-hate relationship with Terry Nation because some of his stories I find frustrating in the way he writes them. But boy, has he come up with some classic stuff. So, Blake 7, Survivors, the Daleks, these are all iconic sci-fi, IPs. And I guess if there was a go-to story with Terry Nation, I'd probably go for a Dalek story, I really love the Keys of Marinus.
Yeah, you like a good quest, a good.
I do.
And it had a twist at the end as well because they thought they'd sorted it all out.
Oh, don't say that.
Oh,
It's funny.
oh,
I have
yeah.
a soft spot for Android Invasion.
Oh yes, I've just watched that recently, actually. So I think I have to go for one of the classics in Doctor Who. I mean, Genesis. He'd been ticked off a bit by Barry Letts that you're churning out the same Dalek plot every time. And then you got Genesis. I mean, wow, what a masterpiece. It just shows you, if you push people and push back a little bit, you will get creativity because it's just there. And to be honest, I don't blame him. If people aren't asking you, if people say, go on and give us another Planet of the Daleks plot, you'd do it, wouldn't you? I mean, come on. And that's what I almost think should be happening now. I'm not going to go into modern Who, don't worry. But, I think if RTD was pushed back on a bit, you might get the masterpieces back. Push. It's creative tension, they call it, don't they?
Yeah, to me, it's a shame that season 2 was already in the can when this season's just gone out. Because I would have been interested to see if with all the pushback, whether or not it would have forced him to double down.
Yeah. Well, as we can see, one of my best friends is in.
Moppy,
Our Mount Isa mate. I know there's other people there.
If they're watching from Mount Isa, I just had a message from my brother today. He sent me a photo of the pub that they used in Crocodile Dundee. He was just passing through, which is not too far from Mount Isa, relatively speaking.
All right.
So my brother's up in that neck of the woods today. Great part of the country. Love it.
It is actually, and it's fun even going around the mines. Actually, I remember doing the mine tours and everything. But I remember they say, because Australia's, it's a bit like America. They say this is the biggest this, biggest that, and all the rest of it. And I know Mount Isa was called the biggest postcode in the world, or something like that. Anyway, he likes Blake 7. I'm not saying his name, you know that now. Divan and Dragon, Terry Nation, great original ideas. I mean, his creation of, as you say, Survivors, Blake 7. I mean, he was still churning out ideas. I think he just got a bit sick of Doctor Who. Let's be honest. I think he wanted to move away from the Daleks, didn't he? But before we get on to Sylvester, we were watching Remembrance of the Daleks yesterday, and Sylvester McCoy's Doctor isn't my favorite Doctor, but that's an age thing, isn't it? But I was watching him and I thought, do you know what? Some of the things I wasn't too into, like the use of the question mark umbrella, he used it so physically and well in Remembrance. He just started to make me think more and more of Patrick Troughton. I don't think he tried to copy him. I just think that their stature and some of their physicality just happens to be similar. What do you reckon?
I would have to agree. Is that a photograph from Wheel in Space?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think I've seen a colour photo from there before.
Yeah,
Really nice.
Yeah. I've got another one with the Cyberman just to the left of him. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as being a lot like the Seventh Doctor, yeah, they do have a lot in common. I would have to agree with you there.
Which is...
And the Second Doctor also had the capacity to be quirky one minute, dark the next minute. He was possibly more quirky than dark, but he still had that potential, always there, sitting under the surface, just like McCoy.
And they both have a gentle warmth to them. Like when you look at, say, Patrick Troughton with Victorian, say, Tomb of the Cyberman, and then compare him to how Sylvester McCoy is with Ace in those quieter moments, it's quite sweet,
Yeah. So it made me think of good old Patrick, and Colin Baker praises him to the hilt for that first regeneration, taking the risk and making it work.
Interesting you brought that photo up too, because that story, The Abominable Snowman, has a previous story to it. There's something going on there that the Doctor knows about that's happened before.
Yeah,
very similar to what the Seventh Doctor does. Often has things going that revolving around plots that have happened before that we've never seen.
Yeah, part of Andrew Cartmel and they all wanted to make him more mysterious again, didn't they? Obviously, there's such a gap with 60s Doctor Who to 80s. 20 years has elapsed, and I think we got to know too much in a way. It became too much of a thing. So yeah, make him more mysterious. Of course, there's a reason I'm showing some of these photographs, and Dwayne will say a lot more in a moment. But you've got the team there: Frazer, Deborah, and Patrick. I think that's Fury from the Deep, isn't it? On that coast, and there's the two of them. I mean, Frazer's got so many stories, as you know, about that, because he was basically, it was a classic. There's not many companions who stick with the Doctor almost through the whole era. And apart from Power of the Daleks, he was in every one, wasn't he?
That's right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, have you met him, Cybermat?
No, I haven't.
So, while we're going to buckle down, it's a detox, so we should refresh. Now, I just brought this up because, you know, you can always do stuff like this. I don't remember these two iterations. I've just linked them more to the Patrick Troughton-esque kind of imagery there. But in Australia, what did you have any adverts when you were growing up? Any sweets, any lollies, anything edible that linked to Doctor Who? My only version really is Weetabix, when we collected the packets to have those dioramas on the back. And I'm the very vivid, happy memories of that. But is there anything that you could go back to in Australia and remember one of your Doctor actors in an advert?
No, that not as far as food goes. We never had anything like that I can recall. Because Weet-Bix it's called Weet-Bix here without the on the end.
That's
so
it,
just
yeah.
Weet-Bix. They always had the cards inside, but they were never Doctor Who cards. I recall seeing Tom Baker in the computer ads. What was it, Prime Computers?
Yes.
I recall seeing those ads more than anything else from those years.
I think John Pertwee also did a Telstra or Telecom back then ad for telephone for when the touch tone phones came in.
Okay, I don't remember that one. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Well, while we're on adverts, we could mention this advert. And this is when I'm going to pass over more to Dwayne, pure historical, because as we're beaming to Australia and America and all our friends, I do obviously like to keep in touch with Australia. And over to you, Dwayne. Do you want to talk us through? I've got the slides here. Just take us through what's been organised.
Excellent. Well, as you know, we at the Sirens of Audio have started in the last bit over 12 months now, bringing certain guests out and putting on live events for the Australian fans. We don't get the opportunity to do that too often because of costs involved, particularly the smaller scale events. And that was our mission all the time, was to get out of the big supernovas, Comic-Con style type events and bring it back down, focused solely on Doctor Who, like it used to be in the good old days. That's what our mission was with these events. So last year we had Janet Fielding. We had her in Sydney, Brisbane, and Hobart. So those events went down really well. So we got a Doctor Who actress in Tassie for the first time in I don't know how long. I think Frazer, not that he's an actress, but Frazer was the last Doctor Who actor to be here in Tassie for a small event like that, probably 12, 13 years ago. And she's back in Australia, and she's going to be joining Sylvester McCoy on some events that we've put together in November. So for the 61st anniversary, Sylvester is going to be in Brisbane. Janet won't be there for that one, but Janet will be in Melbourne and Adelaide on those November dates that you can see there. And yeah, it should be good fun, lots of fun. I think we've had 4 guests out so far. We had Janet, then we had Sophie, we had Katy in October, had Wendy Padbury earlier this year, and yeah, going ahead in November with Janet and Sylvester. But next month in Australia, we've got the opportunity to have Frazer Hines. He's going to be appearing in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, and Katy is going to be in Brisbane with Frazer, and Adelaide, she's going to be at an event on her own. You can see that Hobart's advertised, but we unfortunately had to cancel that one. But all those other dates are ready to go, and you can get tickets from sirensofaudio.com. So anyone in Australia really reaching out to you to get to these. They're not what you would be used to as far as fan events go in the last 10 years. We make them quite small. If you have a look at the website sirensofaudio.com, we have put episodes out with some of our interviews and Q&As and things like that. You can check out what you can expect from those events. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it. Sylvester's looking forward to it too.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you've got it there as his final tour of Aussie. You've got, you know, Janet does visit now and again, being an Aussie, but you know, to get Sylvester and Janet together, that's a hell of a coup. You get your money's worth out of these, don't you? Yeah, I mean, it's a good. I mean, I'm just going to go through it again. It's a good list there. You know, you've got your Janet Fielding, you've got Sylvester McCoy, you've got Katy, and you've got Frazer. All money's worth there. So please, you can see I've just got the ticker tape there, events.sirensofaudio.com. You know, I know Cybermat Strikes has already made some bookings, but, you know, get booking. If I was in Australia now, I'd be booking these. You know, get close up and personal. It's nice when they come to Australia, isn't it? And you don't have to go anywhere else. And
we can assure you too that these guests are not just going to be appearing on stage and then taking off. They're going to be mingling. They love mingling with the fans, and it's an all-day event. So it's not just jump on for half an hour for an interview and then they disappear. You don't see them again till the autograph queue. No, they're back. You have lots of opportunity to ask them questions. You know, there's VIP tickets as well. So we're having a dinner with the guests as well. So you have the opportunity to join them for that too, for even more one-on-one time. And it's, yeah, judging by the events we've had so far, the feedback has been exceptional.
So I called it a convention. You know what I mean? It's meeting the stars, isn't it? And it's lovely to do and get the chance. So those in the thread, are you in Australia? Are you going to go? Have you been to many conventions before? Have you met many of the celebs? Obviously, I was asking our friends. There's me. That's me. 10 years, well, it's 11 years ago now, is it? At the 50th in Newcastle. That was when we met Sylvester. Me and Jamie both met him. And of course, as you know, he's well worth it. I actually booked extra as well, Dwayne. You know, when you have a small group of a panel of about 8 of you. So you had an hour with him so we could talk more as well as the big Q&A. Of course, just this year, I saw him and Katy and Sophie. And he met Wokey the puppet too, Cybermat Strikes. They're good fun. Like you say, Dwayne, they're interactive. They don't stand on ceremony. They do muck in. They were wanting to do loads of stuff with that puppet. So, you know, they're good fun. Obviously, there's Janet going back to 10 years ago when I met the whole team. Peter Davison was due to be there, but, you know, work commitments and all that stuff. But they were great to meet. And, you know, Janet's fun. We bumped into her in the lift and she's so small. I can't believe how small she is. And I'm not tall. And I felt as though I didn't want to crowd her. So I'm one of those fans. I think, oh, no, she's in a lift. She doesn't want another you're rabbiting at you. So I just stood in the lift and said hello. But I thought, leave her alone. Bless her. She's up and down, the hotel. And there's more of the group, you know, they do the group photograph. So there's good old Wendy, Annika. You've got Colin at the back there. You can see Matthew. I'm trying to see one of the early Cybermen. Annette Badland. Yep. So, you know. So I'm sure, Dwayne, you've organised a fair few things. So, you know, who have you met?
Strange as it may seem, I haven't met too many because I've sort of popped in and out of fandom over the years. Philip, my co-host on the podcast, he's the main man when it comes to organising these things, and he's done lots of these events. We've had Louise out before, Louise Jameson.
Yeah.
Both Philip and I have been involved in the past with the Doctor Who of Australia Club Whovention events. So the first Whovention event I was involved with, that's where Janet was. Wendy was there too. Katy was there. The lady who plays Aunt Vanessa was there too that time. One of my jobs was to look after Dudley Simpson. So I would, between his interviews, we would go back to his room and just chat over a glass of wine. That was really cool. And getting to know Dudley, I was able to eventually organise the Myth Makers with Keith Barnfather. He came over and we went down to Dudley's house, and his big grand piano in the middle of the room. That was pretty amazing. I think probably one of the most interesting actors that I met, believe it or not, is only a guest actor who'd been in one episode, and that was Joseph First, who played Professor Zaroff in The Underwater Menace.
Oh, yeah.
Loose Cannon had contacted me and asked if I could interview him for their recon. They were doing a reconstruction of The Underwater Menace, and they wanted to see if Joseph would be up to doing some links and maybe an interview for it. So I was able to go up there and chat with him, and he was the nicest bloke I've ever met. But he came to the door, and he'd obviously had some eye operation or something, but he was wearing an eye patch. So he came to the door and greeted us with this eye patch. He looked so Bond villainesque. It was insane. But yeah, great chats with him too. Yeah.
Well,
there's a few others, but yeah, they're probably the standouts.
Well, the threads are alive with this because, come on, we're Doctor Who fans, for goodness sake. Lee Smith, Katy Manning was my first TV crush. I tell you what the naked Katy with the Dalek, maybe? No. Is that Cthulhu, Chris? I remember fondly when Janet came to Tassie last. She was fantastic. Can't wait for Sylvester. Get booking, Chris, if you haven't already. Moppy, I'll say, in Mount Isa. Saw Katy many years ago in Sydney doing the Run for Your Wife play in 1989. Did you see her backstage? Did you wait for an autograph? Divan and Dragon in Dallas. Rip my heart out. I'd love to catch all these acting professionals in person. And this is why we're doing this. And I've got a few clips today of them in person. So you'll see Sylvester, you'll see Frazer, you'll see Katy. Part of an enticement for the Aussies to book up, but partly to say for those who have never met them, what they're like, just to give you a taster, because we are fans after all, and it's not just about us. Divan and Dragon is just shocked at how young I look, but age is a terrible thing. Saw Nicholas Courtney at Whovention 1990. I never met him, sadly.
I was there. I was at that one.
Yeah,
that
my first convention. Cool. It was amazing. Yep.
And then you know what fans are like. You're getting it at the moment with Tom Baker. People are grabbing poor Tom Baker when he's buying some pasty or something. And it's like, and Lee Smith once cooked Chris Eccleston's dinner and saw him at the bus stop in Keswick. I know this is how we are, and obviously. Moppy continued. Liz Sladen as well. Gosh, that's a good one. Is Liz Sladen, Nick Courtney. Boomer Doug says we all look so happy. Yeah, I don't think I'd paid at that point. No. I mean, Divan and Dragon. I've noticed at cons that the best presentations were pairs and groups acting, playing off at each other on stage. They work so well together. And that's where it all started with Pertwee and Troughton, really, wasn't it? With the Water Pistols and Chicago and all that stuff. I do agree with you. Or sometimes you get panels where it's the 60s panel. I remember seeing one 10 years ago, and it was Peter Purvis, Anneke Willis, and William Russell. And it was a real good chat. And they were comparing doctors and styles and stuff like that. And a bit of cross-pollination works. I mean, at Dwas, I was watching Carol Ann Ford sat next to Frazer Hines. And of course, there was some great cross-pollination of stories there. So yeah, I know what you mean. Dudley Simpson, Moppy's enjoying this. Dudley Simpson was at Whovention, which is actually what you're saying. We kept shouting each other drinks from the bar. Okay. That's one of the best things, isn't it? When you meet these and you get to talk to them over tea and everything. Let's have a look. Let's just see who else we've got here. Right. Katy Manning was in Mount Isa and she lost her contacts after a play. That sounds like Katy, doesn't it? It's just, it's all action. It's all go. So we're here partly, obviously, to talk about Sylvester himself, who's coming to Australia. Now, I'm just listing here because we're all different. And like I said, I was of an age. So, Tom Baker and John Pertwee were my doctors. And that's not going to change. It was my formative years. And obviously, Doctor Who in the 80s was changing. When I looked back at all his stories, and I've included the Doctor Who movie and Power of the Doctor, of course, for completion, I've kind of quickly color-coded them, which ones I think he's strongest in. In a way, it looks as though he gathered speed and wants basically what we want in Shooty to do, if only there was a gap in filming that, you get to know your your doctor and you start to do things your way. What are your thoughts on your favourites or mishits with the Sylvester Doctor?
It's interesting because I was of the age where I'd come to be a real huge fan in season 22. That was the season that grabbed me as a lifelong fan. And then I'd seen bits of Trial of a Time Lord, but then I was eagerly anticipating the arrival of the Seventh Doctor and to see how that went. Season 24 was an unusual season because I was a little bit confused and a little bit concerned as to what they were doing with this, particularly Time and the Rani. You know, you've got the Doctor, you know, falling over on that step in a very silly kind of way, and I was thinking, what is going on here? I actually really enjoyed Delta and the Bannermen. I thought that was for a light-hearted story. I think it's great. As far as the next season go, I was hugely enamored with The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. I really loved that. I thought the Chief Clown was really scary and eerie. I liked Dragonfire at the time, but I kind of liked it less as time went by. But I think, he really came into his own with Remembrance of the Daleks, and they injected that darkness that you're talking about into. You don't see much of that darkness in season 24. Maybe a little bit in Paradise Towers in certain sections if you're looking hard, but Remembrance, where he's going and getting the hand of Omega and you know, powering up Ace's bat and all those scenes was being very mysterious. That's the Seventh Doctor that I love the most.
Cybermat, where do you stand on this?
Look, I remember as a kid thinking that season 24 was fun, but I certainly wouldn't have been the fan that I was to sort of later become. Would have been very young when that was going out, so I was just enjoying it as a kid, getting to watch it after school. And I would have still been like primary school back then, and but yeah, I remember Kane's Kane's face melting off, just just being like in awe of that as a kid, just going, wow, that's awesome. And I remember the bouncing bubbles at the time. I remember those sorts of things stick in my memory. But yeah, Remembrance was big. I as all my friends were like everyone seemed to watch that at the time because the Daleks went upstairs. And I watched it again. I saw your stream was coming up yesterday, and I watched Remembrance again. I'd been saving it because the Blu-ray coming out, I thought, but I couldn't help myself. And God, it's good. It's such a tight story.
And that's where, if you haven't seen it, we're on last night, so have a good look at that because we really go over it. Because actually, I surprised myself because I'm very honest. I'll try and be honest. If I was listing it, it's just I wouldn't be going to Sylvester stories. I do love Sylvester. This is the point. And I would love him as Doctor Who now, today. I think he's got so much more gravitas. And actually, I think I saw a quote and he said, he wasn't a serious actor, but he is now. You know what I mean? He feels that he's grown into it in many ways. So in a way, we're thinking, when I saw him in Power of the Doctor, and I thought, oh, can we have more of that? When I saw him in the Doctor Who movie, I didn't want him to regenerate. You know, I mean, this is it. And so you think, I'm being very honest, wasn't my favorite Doctor, but I actually have always liked his reappearances, and they've got power. And so the man's got magic, and he now knows exactly what he wants from the Doctor as well.
And it's just so
the
amazing.
TV movie is Dan. The TV movie is probably my favorite performance of his. But it also combines with really great direction and his facial expressions and the way he actually gets, through those scenes. He's not in much of it, but man, he's just incredible in the TV movie. And I always liked it from the minute it came out. People often sort of look at that and bag it a bit, but there is so much to love about the TV movie. It's incredible. Not least that TARDIS console room, because that's my favorite TARDIS console room ever.
Yeah. Well, we might talk about
Yeah.
TARDISes today if we have time. So I'll use that as a trailer. But what did you make of the hair? He went a bit mad, Professor.
Yes, yeah, but that's
That
great.
was
That's
great.
fine.
Yeah.
That was the Doctor I see. I mean, Tom Baker had the crazy hair, and
Yeah.
Pertwee had the fluffy hair, and Hartnell had long hair as well. So I think it suits the character really well. Even Davison had long hair. So
Yeah. Of its time. There's a snippet for you, Dwayne, of that TARDIS. I know that I'll show you a lot more.
love it.
Um,
If that could be my
So
man cave, I'd
lived-in.
be a happy man.
I know. Yeah, it's such a good TARDIS that you wouldn't want to go out of it. You just hang out in there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, Moppy in Mount Isa, yes, he had a presence like all good actors who tackle this role should be able to portray. I hear a criticism coming there. Divine and Dragon, were Gatwa transplanted to the McCoy era, I don't think he'd have carried off any but the silliest of McCoy's stories. McCoy could do both light and dark. Now that's a definite now. I agree with that now. I sometimes wondered whether it was just pitched right at the time. I mean, there's so many things that decide whether you're a good Doctor or not. The writing, the style, the director. I mean, there's so many things. And I think the 80s sometimes didn't know what it wanted. It started to, but the poor actors in between. I mean, poor Colin Baker was basically shafted, wasn't he? I mean, it was just, what do you want? He didn't want that costume. He didn't want that. So yeah, it all depends on how you get being treated.
With hindsight, though, that the last 3 seasons, like for such an old show, with all the new talent coming in terms of the writers, and I mean that's exactly what the show needs right now is young new writers that have got want to do something different,
but with a strong script editorial control of what Doctor Who is, rather than. My suspicion with Rogue is they're allowed to go rogue and go completely off the script. It was their first time writing for Doctor Who, but they needed a bit more editorial. I personally think. Now,
I've been thinking since you mentioned it. I've been thinking about Ncuti possibly in a story like Ghostlight. The possibilities for dealing with things like his race and things like in that setting,
yes,
would be really interesting, and they could be done really well. And I think. If he was just dealing with that production team and no one else, I think Ncuti may have been good in a story like Ghostlight.
And what I think I will say about Ncuti before we go back to Sylvester is, I hope Ncuti has enough time so that there's none of this. He could have, that he gets the chance. He just gets the chance, and I just hope they get it together, RTD and that, and give him the scripts, and actually, give him a deadly assassin. Just don't have a companion for an episode. Give him a chance, for God's sake. While we're just doing this kind of cross-pollination, I always have a question now about educating RTD, but it's a brief one because I want to link it to Sylvester's Doctor. So we're not jumping around per se. So here's my question, so to speak. I've just got a little segment here. Yeah, educating RTD. So when you're thinking of the Sylvester era, and like Dwayne, you were going through a lot of the stories there. What do you think if he could kind of just back to back just watch all the Sylvester stories? What lessons do you think RTD now could learn from that, and what he could use now? Because we were going on about last night Remembrance, and I listed about 8 or 9 things that I wasn't trying to have critique. I really said I wished RTD did that. What comes to mind to you that you'd like back from that era?
I think the fact that the Doctor is always an alien. That was something that the 7th Doctor always was, whether he was a clown or whether he was dark and mysterious, he was an alien.
Yeah.
That is not what the Doctor is anymore. The Doctor is more human than anything else. And so I think that's probably the number one lesson that RTD could take from the 7th Doctor era.
Yeah, I agree. The look, I like the fact that Seven, you always got that feeling, a bit like with Tom, that there's more going on and that he knows a greater context than what we know, and
Yeah.
that he's, you know, you always think he's got a plan whether or not he does or not.
And actually, and you know, we just happened to pick Remembrance of the Daleks. But actually, and remember, I'll keep doing the context. I don't eulogize about the McCoy era, but when I watched Remembrance of the Daleks again yesterday, I thought, there's the Doctor in charge. There's the Doctor being quite dark. There's the Doctor being quite heroic. You know, with the Nitro 9 and the Dalek in the scrapyard, for example, you know, he was fronting it. Again, his issues with the military, not landing and saying hi, babes, and showboating. He just gets in the back of their van and says, yeah, and he's straight into the story. Good old Doctor Who. Just sneaks in, really, and is gains respect because of his knowledge. But there's none of this kind of, you know, showboating. And I just think that, you know, Sylvester McCoy always, you know, like I said, in my estimations, was there. And then when I watched it last night, I thought, oh gosh, having watched season 1, whoa, he's gone way up in my estimation now.
But even like I wanted to, I mean, Ben Aronovich's writing through Remembrance is so solid, and you know he hits some similar beats that are in other Dalek stories, but the prosecuting of the the cafe scene to me is where he prosecutes the 2 wires thing, really.
Yeah.
He's just doing it differently. But he's effectively saying, yeah, I feel like Ben would have been one that would have said, Sarah Jane, just touch the, like Sarah Jane touched the wires. But I think the Andrew Morgan's direction in that is so solid too, because every frame of every shot, camera shot, every angle, it's like a comic book. You could literally take each frame and put it on a board, and you'd have it's such a good, like, you could transfer it into a comic very easily.
Yeah. If I was trying to be dead strict here in a way, because I've mentioned Remembrance so much, I'm going to influence thoughts. So if we weren't allowed to mention Remembrance from the Sylvester era, what other example would you have, Dwayne, first, regarding, you know, we always say, has the Doctor had their definitive moment? What apart from, because the cafe it is seen as one of those moments people do mention, but where else do you think, no, there's Sylvester's defining moment?
Well, I had something else in mind, but you've put me on the spot there with that.
Sorry.
What I was going to say was the Curse of Fenric was a good story that, well, it wasn't the only one, but there were lots of stories that demonstrated emotion and how to do emotion in Doctor Who. What about the scene where Ace is screaming at the Doctor, tell me why we're here, and the Doctor's putting her off and they're both yelling at each other. Some people may criticize the acting of that, but I always found it quite powerful. There's even in Battlefield, there's emotional scenes in there that the Doctor shows a couple of times where he's yelling out into the middle of the battlefield, or when he's telling off the Brigadier for dying or thinking he's dead at the end, that kind of thing. So Sylvester could switch between clown, emotional, dark. He was very, very versatile. Very versatile.
Yeah, these 3 seasons, to me, it's such a triumphant end to the series, to be honest. You know, it's aged so well in my estimation. Like I love the clowns. I mean, every one of those stories had something in it that freaked me out as a kid. And that's, you know, I think we've all said this season could have done with a lot more horror for the kids.
Yeah, Jeopardy. You just need more Jeopardy. Now, just looking at Happiness Patrol for a second there, we know the Blu-ray's coming out. Now, I had a couple of my Aussie friends writing to me about possible topics. Now, I might as well raise it now, because I was going to mention the Blu-ray's coming out. So we've got Remembrance, Happiness Patrol and all the rest of it. And James Patrick in Australia said, Brendan, maybe it's worth us talking for a second about, you know, as Aussies, Blu-ray collections and the distribution in Australia. Is it there a change of packaging? And is that why some of you just order direct from Britain? Is there an issue for Aussies regarding these Blu-rays?
Yeah,
That's not the issue for me personally.
Mm.
I can cope with a bit of a slight change in packaging. That was fine. I started off getting the Australian ones, but because there was they started to become such a delay in getting these Blu-rays, you'd have to wait sometimes, up to a year before they would appear in Australia. And then there came a time when there was a distribution change. So I can't remember who was distributing before. Was it Roadshow? Now
I think
they've
there's
gone
been
to
three distribution changes that have each taken a toll on.
Okay, because I think
Yeah.
it's Mad Men now is distributing them now.
Yeah.
And the most recent box set I saw in a store here was season 15. But yeah, I must admit, when I do get my UK versions, I do like the packaging of those and the way they're presented. So I'll probably stick to UK now.
Yeah, well, I can see behind Cybermat, they're all there lined up. I assume you've ordered this season ready, season 25, I think it's called, isn't it?
Yep.
Which one? I mean, it starts well, doesn't it? You've got Remembrance, you've got Happiness Patrol. Brain's Gone Dead for a Second, as it always does nowadays. What were the other two again?
Candyman.
Silver
And
Nemesis.
Silver Nemesis, yes. Yeah, we were saying last night that because this was the 25th anniversary season, so to speak, you called one Silver Nemesis, and that was the Showboat one. But it was Remembrance that stood out the most, really.
Yeah.
For all the reasons we're saying. And the other thing that Rachel was saying last night is she was so shocked as an actress to say Sophie Aldred in Remembrance as well. They've always said that they're shooting Millie chemistry, and they've gone on about the chemistry until I've seen it. Here, I thought the chemistry between Sophie and Sylvester is fantastic, and the dynamic works as well because he is patrician. He is a bit older. He tells her off. He tells her off in episode 3 because she's doing what she's not supposed to do, but he does it in a nice way. And it's caring and it's tactile, and there's cheek in the eyes. There's a lovely relationship there developed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
considering like Remembrance is really, I mean, apart from Dragonfire, I mean, but Remembrance is her first outing solo with Sylvester. I mean, it feels like they've been together forever in that first opening scene when they walk out of the TARDIS together.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Moppy wasn't impressed with Ace killing the Cybermen with I mean, Silver Nemesis, yeah, it had too much going on there. But look at that on the Radio Times. When we did get the Dark Doctor. I've got a question for you, and because I did raise it last night in our Remembrance stream, because I do think this. Instead of us having a more emotionally fragile Doctor now, which it's RTD's choice, and okay, I'll respect that. He's decided that in a dark world he reckons we're in, we need an emotional Doctor. I just think we need somebody like a Dark Doctor, like the Sylvester one was becoming. I actually think in a dark world, you want to see the Dark Doctor deal, because we call him a Dark Doctor, but he's just more Machiavellian. He's more mysterious, therefore more charismatic. But he's such a hero. That's what we need. I don't know what you think, Dwayne, about the type of Doctor you need for 2024, but I think he fits.
It's not just Doctor Who. I think everyone in entertainment these days seems to want to put someone on the screen that someone can see themselves as being, which I find really confusing because, I've had my issues with, depression, other, mental health issues in the past. I didn't want to see someone on the screen who was depressed. I wanted to see someone on the screen who I could feel safe with and who made me feel good about myself.
Yeah.
I didn't want to relate to someone on screen what I was going through. Just as if I'm feeling emotional about something, I want to, I want to escape into TV of any description, not just Doctor Who, but I want to escape and feel better. I don't want to feel like I'm being empathized with. I think that's a mistake that most entertainment's making these days.
Yeah, and it's not being disrespectful to anybody's mental situation, and we all will have anxieties and problems and upsets. It is life after all. But yeah, I'm one of those who likes a distraction. It's good for the brain, isn't it? If you're upset all day, if you're having a very hard week, and I mean you really are, pressure, the lot. Things are going on in your personal life, your professional life's also bad, everything joins up. And then for 25 minutes or 45 minutes, you have some sci-fi distraction. Your brain can switch off. Your brain can actually have a rest, and rest is good for resilience. You don't have to always be going into how can I solve. Sometimes you just need rest. And yeah, I agree with you that Doctor Who, for me, served that purpose. I was somewhere way beyond anything I recognized. Brilliant.
Yeah.
When I watched the Happiness Patrol, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is a classic skit on South America, one of those, hunter, authoritarian countries. I wasn't. I was just thinking, okay, why have they got pink hair? I was I was just working out all that.
Yes. Do you see yourself in the Candyman? No.
I was wondering how did they get away with that? That's all. I still don't know how they got away with that. But yes, what about okay? Before I move on to just a little other element, I was actually saying last night about I can't stand the question marks. Again, that's not his choice. This is J&T, really, isn't it? But he uses it so well, though. He's like a Charlie Chaplin half the time. But it started with Tom Baker, not Sylvester. It was Tom Baker. We had the question marks on the collars and all the rest of it. Where do you feel with all this sort of stuff? Did you think Doctor Who got a bit too self-indulgent with this sort of thing?
I think it was okay. Myself, as a young fan, it didn't worry me at all at the time. I would prefer Sylvester's costume to Colin's costume any day.
Yeah.
It was the colours in the costume that worried me more. That at least all that, even with the question mark, seems to match with Sylvester.
I don't know if it's just the fact I grew up with both of them from such a young age. To me, Colin in that costume is the Doctor, and Sylvester is the Doctor in his costume. They just, it's when I see other people try and wear Colin's outfit or put it on, even just putting it on, like even Sylvester in it, it's no one else can pull it off as far as I'm concerned.
What about this costume then? We're talking about good old Sylvester. There we go. Good old power of the Doctor. I mean, I love his stature really because look at that in the middle there, owning it. And I have to say, I love the way the power of the Doctor had him and Paul McGann pulling faces to each other when they did that kind of, morphing from one face to another. Look at that. He's, oh my God, he's got so much gravitas now on the screen. And you think, and I'm showing you Janet as well, because you've got Janet coming up with Sirens of Audio, haven't you? And her status has elevated even more because she was in Power of the Doctor with Ace, wasn't she? And fell down a lift shaft and somehow survived. I don't know how that happened.
I was going to say, we need to find out how she survived that. She just walked out the bottom.
I wonder what she thinks of that backstory she was given. I know they won't actually say because they're in the club again, but all that backstory of her fighting environment, and she's got a son somewhere, and and the story is she with Nyssa, all this stuff. I just like Tegan being Tegan. I don't necessarily want all this crazy backstory, but I love. You see. Again, Sophie's a lovely lady, but it's not my era. I loved seeing Janet Fielding back. Absolutely. And I think she fit it. Anyway, what were your thoughts when you saw them both back in Power of the Doctor?
Yeah, loved it. They look great. But I have trouble as a Big Finish fan dealing with all the history that's being created in the Big Finish backstories with Tegan. So she makes a comment there. I haven't seen him for 40 years. Well, she has. Because you've got all that Big Finish backstory as well. There's a story particularly where the Fifth Doctor goes back and meets Tegan when she's dying of cancer, and so that's kind of overlooked. So, I mean, the TV series will never canonize any extended media, of course, but that's just me personally as a fan of these things. Kind of niggles me a little bit. Probably no one else would even notice.
Yeah. By the way, since we're talking Australia and Australians, how I mean, it's nothing to do with Janet. It's to do with how it was written. But as it's developed, how happy or not, or embarrassed, or pleased, or ecstatic were you to have an Australian character in Doctor Who? And is it the type of Australian character you wanted? Because, you know, often you'll talk to Americans, Australians, whoever, about stereotyping, etc. How did you feel the Tegan worked?
She's not really an Australian character. She's more like to me, she's more of a British character with an Australian accent, because she's always whinging about stuff. Not that the Brits whinge about everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, Aussies are a bit more laid back than Tegan ever was. She was pretty highly strung.
And I have to say,
I find Tegan too full on.
I didn't like. I think that the TARDIS crew of 3 and Peter Davison was unfair to Peter Davison and each of them. When you got less of, you know, when they reduced the 3, I think it gave Tegan a chance to be less than look as though she was a mouth on legs, which she wanted.
By the time she got to season 21, she'd really mellowed, and she was a lot calmer in that scenario.
Now I'm showing this one because, of course, you've got Katy Manning coming over, and when we had Power of the Doctor, I mean, a clever scene. This, in fact, it was for a Doctor Who fan, it was probably one of these scenes. But you could hear Katy Manning's laugh more than she was given lines, and I thought, oh, you know, well, let's be honest, most of those around there you wanted to have more lines. But Katy Manning, I was so distracted by. I could hear her laugh, and I was thinking, is she going to get a line in a minute? Go on, come on, she's Jo Grant. And it was a very frustrating scene, I found, in some respects.
Yeah, it felt like it needed more.
I found it joyous, actually, because you heard her laugh before you saw her.
Yeah.
And I knew that was Katy, and so that made me smile. Yeah. Considering I'd got through the whole episode to that point.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, well, I didn't understand what was going on to start with, but yeah, that scene was nice at the end. Yeah,
I needed it. I needed that scene. I just wanted more of it. I almost wanted it as an episode. So I mean, you know, nostalgia wins, doesn't it? While we're talking about Sylvester, there's good old Ace doing her business again. Oh, look at that! I mean, you see, depending on who are your favourites and everybody, Power of the Doctor did have some interesting moments. Now, you had Peter Davison talking to Tegan. You had Ace talking to Sylvester. Out of those 2 moments, which is your go-to as a clip?
Oh, it's so hard to pick. I love the 5th Doctor and Tegan, actually.
Yeah.
But I get emotional, a little bit teary at both. At both of them. They're both equally powerful. I can't choose, Brendan. What are you trying to do to me?
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. It's joyous, but at the same time, I find it so sad.
Yeah.
And then it just because you really, to me, it just highlighted you just can't go back on this stuff and do it justice, really.
It's I think I love your word, Dwayne. It's joyous as in seeing your old heroes and characters back, and actually not dissed and not destroyed and not stereotyped. Sometimes, you know, they're given a lovely meaty moment. Like I said, I'll keep saying it, McCoy's is not my era, but I found this moment extremely touching. The Peter Davison, Janet Fielding one, the lines were different, weren't they? And I still don't understand this obsession with Adric. You know, that in the Tales of the TARDIS and also in Power of the Doctor, it's as if they all want to talk about Adric all the time. Now, I know in real life you'd go, well, God, one of our TARDIS crew was killed. But by Time Flight, they were over it. And but suddenly, you know, 40 years later, we're going, shall we talk about Adric again? I'm thinking, oh, no, don't do this. That wasn't the relationship. That was not the relationship that was set up. And so these two had a proper interpersonal moment. And I just thought, oh, the Adric thing was it didn't fit with, I thought, the Tegan character, really. But anyway, that's just me. I'm just saying what I think.
The thing is, though, like, see, with Sophie and or Ace and Seven, that there was quite a modern story arc there in terms of building a relationship between the Doctor and her over the 3 seasons. One that's easier to pick up on, but I still like when you look at the Peter Davison era with those TARDIS crew, they really don't develop the relationships in the modern sense of it, do they? Really?
No.
You don't learn anything more about them. There really isn't. What else would you lock onto between 5 and Tegan?
So there we go. These are all coming up if you want to see them with Sirens of Audio. But while we're talking about this, I cannot ignore Sylvester. I mean, I know Peter Davison directed and wrote the script, and boy, did I love the 5-ish Doctors. And all 3 of them play an outstanding role. And I'm so upset that they never got a chance to do it again. I know Peter Davison had planned it. But Sylvester McCoy, the magical little imp, it's so funny to see the 2 taller actors and him all physically. I mean, you all saw this, obviously, didn't you?
Isn't it awesome?
This is good TV. It was funny.
The motion picture.
Yeah, and all the jokes about Tom Baker and all the jokes about him being a star in The Hobbit. And then I've forgotten his name. Ian McKellen, like, who is he? And then all this stuff.
The John Barrowman gag I thought was fantastic as well. He's got the whole family and he's trying to hide them.
I think at our Katy Manning event last year, we were having an audience discussion about anniversary stories. So which anniversary story was your favorite and why? And someone actually brought this up as their favorite anniversary story.
Yeah.
Because it was for the 50th. Lots and lots of nods to the past, lots of humor, gives you all the good feels, just like something like the 5 Doctors does.
Yeah.
And, this kind of comedic story definitely has a place in something like an anniversary special. So for some people, it's their favorite. It was their highlight of the 50th.
I think I agree. I mean, gosh, the competition's stiff. I mean, you had Night of the Doctor and all the rest of it. You had the Adventures in Time and Space. Love them all. But this for nostalgia and warmth and cleverness, because I have to say, all credit to Peter Davison. That was well put together. And there was so much real comedy. And the warmth I had for those 3, you almost were convinced. And I love the touches, Colin Baker, was he at the back of his garden and he wants to put another Doctor Who on and all his girls are like, oh God, here we go. And Peter Davison with his lads, I just thought, this is lovely. Absolutely lovely. I could watch so much more of that and I really would want more. I'm amazed it was never really put on terrestrial TV, because there's no comedy on TV now. And I think that would grab people. It's proper comedy.
Yeah, how considering that was a decade ago, boy, we were spoilt in the 50th, weren't we? Yeah.
There they are.
Beautiful.
No, and they do look as though they really get on, and I think I do think they do. But yeah, mucking in together and all the rest of it. So we're all here, Doctor Who fans getting together, sharing ideas, sharing stories, talking about whether you want to meet up with some of the stars in Australia with Sirens of Audio. And just to entice you, some of you have not met some of these Doctor Who celebs. I haven't met loads of them, but let's have a moment, shall we? And actually, let's just enjoy the beauty of seeing Katy, Frazer, and Sylvester. Let's have a go.
And the Highland accent is very soft and up and down.
Fine.
Is it fine? Like this. And I thought, well, when I'm going to start sign for another year, I thought, it's a boring accent. I thought, oh, Doctor, look at the size of that monster. He'll be up there chasing us.
You sound like Mrs. Doubtfire.
So it's not dramatic. So I watered it down. So I'd love to see the Highlanders again to see how my accent was and when I started to water it down.
Yeah, because I was watching Macatera and I thought, because I had it on December, oh my God, That's Jamie. It's quite, but then you do mellow and it softens.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
which I think is probably
See,
understandable.
when Hamish Wilson took over, he had a more Glasgow accent.
Yes.
Oh, doctor, I don't see about that. Oh, go on, kill him. You know, he was a bit sort of tougher, Hamish Wilson.
It's that thing you do, you know, when you... Do you ever find yourself at home and things are going on in your head and you start doing this? And it's like a dog making its basket, isn't it? I'm sorry. It's amazing. I do just like to come out and hug you all because that's what I seem to do from the moment I get on the train. To be or not to be?
Sit. The thing is that we've been doing Doctor Who all the time since on audio, Big Finish, so that part of it was just the same, but wearing costumes was great fun.
I mean, she was supposed to be telepathically.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was part of our policy, really. Andrew Cartmel and myself, when we all met, we wanted, because I remember when I first saw Doctor Who with you in it. Yes. Well, I kind of thought, in those days, it was the 60s, and when you watched Doctor Who was very advanced, because the BBC, known as Auntie, was very uptight and very conservative. And there was a revolutionary feel about the 60s and about Doctor Who at the time. It reflected that. And so when I got the job, I wanted that to happen with Doctor Who.
Okay, there you go. Just a little snippet. And of course, if you want to see these again live in Australia, especially, Dwayne's your man. And if I just kind of explain just one more time, quite briefly, you've got Sylvester's final tour, Melbourne, Adelaide, Hobart, Brisbane, Sydney. This is all November. You can see on our ticker tape, events.sirensofaudio.com. Janet Fielding is kind of paired up with him as well in Melbourne and Adelaide, yeah? Am I correct on that?
That's right. Yep.
Yep.
But depending on, say, if there's enough tickets sold in some of the other locations, we might be able to talk her into going to those too. Always a possibility. Okay,
there's the incentive. She's Australian after all, so just have a gander at those dates. Have a gander at that website there. I've just shown you that was Katy, Frazer, and Sylvester 2 months ago, so you can see. You know, he's a live wire. He's very creative. He's very funny. Katy Manning, she just comes up with new stories every time. And Frazer Hines, he's a great laugh as well, I have to say. I enjoyed their company. And of course, there's the two there. And the only change there on one of the posters, as Dwayne was saying, is that Katy's not in Hobart. But there's the dates there for everybody. And of course, you may not be Australian, but you may be visiting Australia. Well, book these now. I know Cybermat Strikes was in there first. He struck. But Dwayne, do you want to add anything again about these events?
No, just don't hesitate to come. I don't know. People seem to be less inclined to gather together. And you said before it wasn't a convention, but what I have enjoyed seeing is I've enjoyed seeing all the fans getting together face to face, and even when they're just talking with each other, just because often we're sitting here in our man caves on our own, even if we're like this. There's nothing quite like being face to face with people, and having good times. Talking about the things that we love. You can always guarantee that everyone there is a Doctor Who fan, so you've got lots in common to talk about with these people.
Yeah, and one of your Tassie twins over there, Triple Jazz Musical. Have you booked Triple Jazz? Do you know Triple Jazz, Dwayne?
No, I don't.
Also in Tassie.
And that's it. There's lots of fans in Tassie as well, but we're sort of not quite used to getting together as much as we used to. There was a time when us fans, particularly in Australia, we'd often gather more. I think COVID had a bit of a part to play in making people want to stay apart a bit more. But if we're all careful, we can get back together and enjoy things the way they used to be.
Well, notice how back then, and I know you're saying back then, that was 2 months ago, Triple Jazz. Interviews and convention conversations seem far less staged and defensive. It feels very micromanaged nowadays. I think this is the trouble. If you look at San Diego Comic Con, it's a very different beast, it looks like to me, than Dwas, the one Dwayne and Phil are arranging. They're much more personable, aren't they? As you were saying, much more interactive. People are less, and I think there's an element with the classic Who crowd as well, compared to, you know, it's a different beast now, let's be honest. I know that I can only speak from what I see, and I was mixing at Dwas with the actors. You know, you walk past them, you're at the bar with them, buying drinks right behind them. You might be sharing breakfast and nattering over toast. These people are approachable, friendly. They're on performance. That you know, they know why they're there, and they give you your money's worth. And I would always recommend, if I was in Australia now, I used to live in Brisbane, I would be booking this up. I really would.
Hell, if I was in the UK for November, I'd be coming over here, getting into the beaches, the hot sun, and if you're a Doctor Who fan, it's just a bonus.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, normally I do go to Australia once every year or two, but this year, because I'm sorting my wedding out and going to America, I'll have to miss it this year. But there'll be another time. So yes. So Dwayne, good on you for that, and I hope it goes really well. I know you've done them before, so I hope that really fills out and you have a really good time. And get this, folks, get this. He's going to be showing Sylvester around Tassie for a week. Oh, my God. Can you imagine the conversations?
It's a hard job. Someone's got to do it.
I bet you cannot wait.
Bit nervous, but
yeah.
We'll be all right.
Yeah, nervous, but whoa, we'd all swap places with you now, I tell you. Oh, gosh. Come on then, everybody. He has got accommodation. No, yeah. Can we all book at your place that week?
It was funny when we were showing Janet around Tassie last year. I took her to a couple of places, and the funny thing was, whenever we went up high to get views of certain areas, the mist would come in, so all the views were blocked wherever we went. That happened in Tassie. There's a mountain overlooks Hobart called Mount Wellington. So we went up, and it was sunny all the way up till about 50 meters to the top, and then it was fog. And then when we took her out to the Three Sisters out Western Sydney. And the mist just came in, and we couldn't see a thing there either.
No,
so that was hilarious. It was a bit of a running gag.
It does happen, yeah.
Well, we let's add to some of the fun now. We were, like I said, last night's stream, we were looking at good old Sylvester McCoy and Sophie in Remembrance, and it is a good go-to one for Sylvester. But of course, we play that game, and you know what I'm going to do, which is, what would the 15th Doctor do? What would Shooty's Doctor do in the same Remembrance of the Dalek scenario? Now, we played it last night, but what will these two Aussies say? Let's have a think, eh? Here we go. Right, so we're putting you under pressure now. There he is with his Nitro 9. He's been the hero in episode 1. The first time we see the Dalek, who's been hiding in the shed. He's coming down the other side, big brick wall in the middle. And of course, this is 88. But what would the 15th Doctor do in this kind of scenario? There's a trapped Dalek. There's some explosive. What would he do you reckon?
He'd sing. Let's throw the Nitro 9, throw the Nitro 9, and do a little jig before he throws it.
Actually, and then forget he's only got 8 seconds and blow up.
Actually, you've made me think, Dwayne, actually, that he has said in a quotation he wants to twerk with a Dalek, doesn't he? So I suppose I should have said, yes, come and get this booty. No. But anyway, that's that one. Let's try another one. Here's the famous one. In the coffee shop scene. We were saying last night, this could, and it shouldn't be, but it would be different because of the 15th Doctor being black. It shouldn't be different because the Doctor's alien. But I think it would have to be written differently and the responses be different. So it is quite a problematic one, we realise. When you do this interesting comparison, because that's all we're doing is comparing the 15th Doctor and putting them into, in this case, the 7th Doctor story. Gosh, hasn't the world changed? Because the conversation, if you're not aware of it in detail, was the Doctor was saying, if only I could change people's taste buds. And yeah, the slave trade and what happened and all the ripple effect of that. And the coffee owner just says, life's like that. Best thing is just to get on with it. I mean, I don't think those lines would be written now. I think there'd be much more aggression or anger about, or maybe going more on the hurt and victim thing. But, you know, I don't think those lines would be written now at all. So that was an interesting one. Anyone got any thoughts on that one? Because it's a politically different one, isn't it, if we were comparing?
All I kept thinking was, why isn't Ben Aronovich writing for current Doctor Who?
Yeah. I must admit, you sound like a fan. I'm a fan too. I think that was a really, really good story.
He might say something like, I've got a TARDIS over there. Do you want to come back and go back and stop colonialism with me?
Yes, he might do that. Yes, the Comic-Con quotation is there. Actually, you know, the climax to episode 4, there's a few scenes here, which I found interesting because this is where he does come across as quite hard-nosed and clinical. You know, it looks as though Scaro's going to be destroyed. It looks as though Davros is going to be destroyed. And Davros is asking for pity. And basically, there is none about. He just says, have pity on me. I have pity for you. Goodbye, Davros. It hasn't been pleasant. I mean, that's a parting comment to somebody who might die. That's the Doctor for you. I immediately thought of Dot and Bubble and thought, no, he would be saying, I'll get you a planet. I'll sit you down. But yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? And then, of course, the suicidal Black Dalek.
I love the way he talks him into killing himself. It's so weird.
Well, it's not a very good mental health message, you know, RTD and his mental health messaging. You know, you don't encourage a suicidal to do it. So, you know, this is when I think with the Dot and Bubble, you'd say to that Black Dalek, you're the last Dalek around. I'll find you a planet that's empty and I'll let you live there. Because remember, it was white supremacists in in Dot and Bubble. So he was happy to get them a planet, even though they were racist.
Just so the 7's not cancelled, just remember that 7 did beg Davros not to do it. And, you know,
he did.
Gave him full warning, begged him not to do it. Asked him for pity, and then, like in Genesis, he got hoisted on his own petard.
But the thing I don't get, I mean, it works if you just watch it and it's entertaining. But actually, when you study it, you think the Thals are on Skaro. Why did the Thals have to die, Doctor? I don't get that bit. You know, the Thals were peace loving.
Weren't they long gone by the time Davros and the Imperial Daleks came around?
Did he want to check? Did he want to just check? But yeah, there's that one. And then the last one, folks, that's the end of the Black Dalek. He says, as ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I would have thought, this is when I say, I think the shooty 15th Doctor would probably be very tearful and cry. Remember what he was like with the snot monster in Space Babies? He had to save him because he was the last of his kind.
Yeah, he wouldn't react quite the same, would he? Wouldn't put a tip of it on his umbrella and blow it off like the 7th Doctor did. That's for sure.
Nah. So I always think it's an interesting comparison to actually see how far the Doctor's changed and actually how dark 5 stories in the Sylvester character was, because he was really hard-nosed in this one. But also, as we all said, that coffee scene, he's so thoughtful and ruminating. It's actually one of the only... can you remind me of any other Sylvester story you can think of where we've got lots of time periods? You know, they're all over, you know, we'll go to the bed and breakfast and sleep overnight and wait to hear from the group Captain Gilmore tomorrow. And then there's all these time periods where the Doctor's, you know, can I have a coffee, please? I'm just going to sit here and have a think about life. You know, you don't get that much in Doctor Who, do you?
No, it doesn't.
That's true.
It didn't dawn on me until the rewatch last night, and it's funny because I've watched it so many times over the years. But you know, he is literally going to, you know, he's trying to ponder and think about what are the consequences of what he's about to set up here. And it kind of escaped me in the past, but what's that? Ben Aronovich is heading for Hobart.
There you go.
Ooh.
Yep, get that spare bed made. That's it. Get him to make another one. What were you saying, Cybermat? Go on.
No, I did. Is it what does anyone know what he does these days? Is he still writing?
Ben Aronovich.
Yeah,
He's writing novels, I thought.
yeah. I can't. I mean, yeah, I can't understand why any of these guys haven't come back.
Well, you have to be asked nowadays, don't you? You have to be asked. PB Props is reminding me, because I did ask the question. Silver Nemesis had a few hops around in time. Were there any pauses though when, you know, he sits quietly and
They listen to jazz.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's true. But thanks for that, PB Props, because I it's not my era really. I've watched them all, but you know, I can't remember every single thing. Right, we've said highlights and strong points. I know we've mentioned Time and Irani, which I think was failed in a few sequences. It needed more music in the background. That whole studio set when he's playing the spoons and being very physical, you can hear the set, and I just think it needed some incidental music. That would have helped it. But where do you see a low point in the Seventh Doctor era? You know, when you think, oh, that did not work, or
I think it's more a case of it started okay and went up from there. I feel that it was quite triumphant towards the end.
yeah, okay,
Despite all the efforts by the BBC to get it squashed.
To make it triumphant, here's the question then. Let's do it another way. I know he got darker, and Andrew Cartmel was more influential, but when you say he ended up, it triumphant, what were they getting right that they weren't at the beginning?
Well, look, I think it's fair to say that, I mean, there's a lot of different stories through that era, and they were experimenting. I mean, even Ghostlight, I mean, that is a show that I've watched over and over again, and it took me a while to fully, you know, feel like I get this now. But you know, none of them treat the audience as stupid in my view. I feel like it was.
If we're talking about low points, there was a time. I don't feel this way now. That's for sure. I don't feel there's any low points in the McCoy era myself. But one story that really got me at the time on first transmission more than anything else, even anything from season 24, was the Happiness Patrol. I didn't get it. I was too young. I didn't understand what the Thatcher references, the satire. I didn't understand what they were doing at the time. So I always viewed it as the Crappiness Patrol. It was my least favorite. At the time it was being shown in Australia, it was 5:30 in an afternoon, and it was part of a magazine style program. And the host was a guy called James Valentine. He's notorious in Doctor Who fandom for not liking Doctor Who at all. And when the Candyman appeared at the end of episode 1, and that the cliffhanger for that, my dad was there with me, so he was laughing. He thought it was, I was embarrassed about it because my dad was laughing. But then the credits finished, and James Valentine was there with his arms crossed and shaking his head, going, "What is this show doing? What's it turned into?" He actually said that. There's something along those lines. And so I was hit with that double whammy. I was embarrassed about that for years. But now I look back at the Happiness Patrol and I think it's a work of genius. Probably one of my favorite things of season 25. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing the extended version on the Blu-rays when it comes out.
I think I did it on a stream. The way they've added those sets and made them bigger and almost Minority Report adverts in the streets, it just looks so much better. Yes, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I've just finished watching Underworld, and you know, sometimes you have to go back and go, look, does this deserve the treatment it gets? Does it deserve it? And
I've always loved Underworld.
Yeah. Jamie liked it more than me, but you know, we're all different, aren't we? The quest is the quest, you know. But
Very, very rarely do I mean, for me personally, shaky effects never undermine the story for me in Doctor Who. It to me, I'm always impressed with the ambition of the story, with knowing they had limited budget.
I was always intrigued by Underworld, though. I was thinking, why did they have those on green screen and these bits not? Because there are quite a few sets there. The cave one, I didn't seem to think was the hardest thing to do anyway. But it was just, I was interested in the choices they made. Maybe they wanted to experiment a bit anyway. Triple Jazz, I might as well mention again. I can't bear Time and Irani. It's the first few minutes with McCoy. Fake tumbling downstairs was embarrassing. And like I said, I think sometimes incidental music can stop that echo of the studio, and he could have maybe helped that. So he's gone for the physicality. The directors allowed it. They haven't really thought the Doctor through. As Dan says, by the time they got to season 3, they were triumphant and they'd worked all this through. But you do like the bubbles, though. I know everybody loves that effect. It really did work, and it's really memorable. PB Props, Battlefield is a true low point. We reviewed that recently. I know I can take or leave it. I'll be honest with you. The chalk circles and the loving between Ace and that girl, I didn't understand really. And oh yeah, I liked the Brigadier's Garden. I thought that was amazing. Really shows how
those comments, because this is the same writer of Remembrance of the Daleks. So
true.
You know, another Aronovich story.
True.
Yeah, I like
point.
I like Battlefield. I think I'm just glad they brought Nick Courtney back as Brigadier proper, not memory burnout Brigadier from.
Oh yeah. With his timey-wimey.
Yeah.
I was a perfect age in Battlefield to appreciate Sophie Aldred's outfit.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it there.
Right. Paul Richards.
Sophie Aldred.
Oh yeah. The tone of McCoy's first season was very comedic, but it became more serious by the second season. Yeah, they had a gap, they had a think. Andrew Cartmel had got his feet under the table, and voila. And I think Sylvester did get allowed input. Whereas I do feel for Shooty. I don't think he's set the filming up as it is. And, okay, I'll do 2 seasons. That's the way we're filming. But he's having to learn very quickly, and I don't know how much you can adapt when you're on a treadmill. And I feel for that, and I hope we don't get hurt by this. Paul Baker tells us Ben Aronovich is writing novels, but they are very modern, PC and inclusive. Good stories, but ... Triple Jazz. I didn't like the music in Battlefield. The music in this era does not help. Now, I know there's fans of many of these composers, but it wasn't me, and it must be I was at uni. Just nah. It always sounded a bit like, if in doubt, do a quick beat like that. And it was, even when you see the Daleks come out of a shed, you just basically get a quick kind of electronic beat. And I thought, and that's got nothing to do with Sylvester or Sophie acting their butts off. I'm dying to see the Candyman. I really want to see what I think now. Yeah.
He's awesome. That's what he is.
Well, there you go. PB Props is saying, watch Underworld in black and white. It improves the look by quite a bit. That's a point. Sometimes our tellies don't help. They're too precise nowadays. Now, Doctor How. Doctor How's Australia, isn't he? I think Battlefield went a bit into a fantasy direction. I didn't mind it. The Brig had a moment. Rob Fellows, the brash video look was a bit off-putting to me. If it had been shot on film with more muted colours, I think it would have a more 60s Adventures feel. People happy about Battlefield because it had Gene Marsh in it? Well, yeah, too right. Peter Davison was very critical of the music in Delta. Don't you like them behind the sofas? I'm fascinated by how far they go. Some people... The actors are nice to each other and very respectful, but when you get behind the sofa, they sit back and they're kind of going, I'm amazed they got away with that. Which teams have you liked watching on Behind the Sofa? Which kind of chemistries?
The last one I watched was, I've been going through season 15, and I watched the behind the sofa for Image of the Fendale.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to see Colin Baker's reaction to particularly the suicide at the end, and because the doctor aids in that suicide at the end, and Colin saying, they used to have a go at me for being violent during my era, but they were much worse back then. And in some ways, I think it's true. That was very, very heavy scene, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a clever idea, because if you get the right behind the sofa panel, they kick off with each other, but they seem to be quite honest. What is the vibe there? Are they given just clips? They can't watch all four.
Well,
I think it's an edited. It's a cut down.
Yeah, they don't watch the whole thing.
Because I was going to say, because they sometimes say I didn't understand that, and I'm thinking if it was just clips, maybe not. Then yeah, I can't imagine you.
I must admit, I when Peter gets in that mode, I don't enjoy it that much, because it's easy to sit there and just crap on it.
Oh, he's Doctor Who as an Australian. There you go. I did think so. Doctor Who was one of several cultural links to the UK that we had growing up. Yes, and we had Skippy, and we had Liza Goddard, who, as you know, has a very posh accent now, but was in Skippy in Australia and sounded Australian. So, yeah, we had Skippy. I'm trying to think else what we had from Australia.
Did she play a character called Clancy? Is that who she was?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's a cute story, and I did. It was Neighbours that made it for us, though. You know, we fell for Neighbours. Home and Away tried, but Neighbours was the one. And even then, I was at uni, and Neighbours was on. We'd watch it after our seminars, and then Mum and Dad said, "Do you want to go to Australia for a year?" And I went, "Yeah." I'd never thought of it really. Didn't know where I was going. I mean, I knew where Australia was, didn't know much about it. And I learned enough to want to live there. So there we go.
Where'd you end up? Sydney?
Brisbane.
Oh, Brisbane.
I was being technical. What am I saying technical? Most of my family's around Melbourne. Now they're now in Torquay and Geelong. My brother's in Adelaide. So I should be down south. But I thought, why would you emigrate to get a winter that's a little bit like Britain? You should emigrate to something different. So I went subtropical.
So it wasn't because you thought that's where Tegan came from?
Yeah, I thought, there's some.
You wanted to visit the sweatshop, didn't you?
Yes, I wanted some tasty Logopolitans. When I do wonder about that story, when you really study Logopolis, it was all old men. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it's hardly, you can't sell it, can't you? It's about maths, and it's got lots of old men in it.
It's a good point. Where did the more Logopolitans come from?
Yeah. They added them together because, logic now is death plus death makes life. So 1 + 1 = 2.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. But I do sometimes wonder, oh God, sorry, Paul Richards. Yes, I'll come to that. Home and Away, when 90% of the cast were normal looking instead of today, where it seems soft porn for the late teens. Well, yeah. You see, people go on about mental health, but if I was a teenager now, I'd be going, yeah, a 6-pack's not good enough. You need an 8-pack, a 12-pack. You know, how can you be resilient to that? But yes, I do remember Paul Richards' Prisoner Cell Block H. Yes. We would watch that at midnight before I would stay up all night to write my dissertation for university. I was telling everybody last night that Saturday night no, sorry, that's a lie. It wasn't Saturday night anymore. Remembrance of the Daleks, midweek. I got the 2 lads in our digs to watch it because we only had one telly, and risking embarrassment, but actually, obviously, Remembrance was fine. And like Colin Baker, I stood up for most of the episodes going, I love this. And then you go back upstairs, do a bit more of your essay preparation, knowing you're going to work all night. And then Prisoner Cell Block H, about midnight, you'd have a nice break watching Vinegar Tits and all them characters. Sin brutality. Yeah,
of course, never called Cell Block H here. It was always just Prisoner.
Was it?
Yep.
I mean, it was of its time, as in all these things. No, we got a country practice as well, didn't we? We got the Sullivans.
Sullivan's was great.
Yeah, the Sullivans.
Yeah, I remember watching reruns of that.
Yeah. Oh yes, Moppy tells us, yes, when I was coming home from school, my gran had sons and daughters on. Yep. Yes.
Did you guys have like in the, because over here the ABC, like we had 3 shows on like every afternoon. It was like The Goodies, Doctor Who, and Monkey Magic.
You were lucky. Yeah,
every day.
You got to see the Goodies so much more. We got the Goodies once and never repeated, it felt like to me, apart from one of their Christmas ones. And every time I visited Australia, everyone went on about the Goodies. And I thought, well, I, as a kid, loved the Goodies, but they're well gone, you know. But I remember working for Mars in Ballarat, and all the Aussies on the line were talking about Cilla Black and all our stars of the time. And I was thinking, you know, I thought, how many Aussies are really into the British culture? I mean, but I didn't know what you were seeing on TV. And then New Year's Eve 1989, when I was backpacking around Australia, my Doctor Who pen pal, he would let me stay with his family, shared a bit of floor space with his gran, and they had a beach house in San Remo. And I remember on telly, they had the Royal Variety performance, and Cilla Black was on, and it was Holding Back the Years was Simply Red. And the whole Aussie family was sat there watching Britain celebrate New Year. It was very weird. Very weird. But anyway, we are cousins after all. Wentworth Prison was the remake of Prisoner. Yep. Right. So we mentioned TARDISes ages ago. What is the plural for TARDIS? I really don't know. But we were talking about how McGann's TARDIS was beautiful. Or I suppose McCoy might say, hey, it's my TARDIS first. But I want to ask you your opinion on these TARDIS interiors. And then we'll get to what's your favourite. So there's one slightly more akin to now. Now, I'm going to ask you your favourite as I've shown you these. I love that entrance, mind you. My God. The trouble is, it's suffering from the same thing as now, which is big space, but why? You know, there's not much in it.
The Master's TARDIS over there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a bit of Legopolis done again. So there's that one from the actual series, of course. Bit of a retro vibe. So again, be thinking which ones you prefer. What about that one?
Oh, that's nice.
It is nice.
Is it too homely? I know why we like the McGann one. It had rugs, it had all that stuff. But when, you know, like when you look at these, when do you go back more Hartnell-esque? And when do you go more homely? So where you standing so far on those 3?
I'm going homely.
Are you going?
That's the one there that we're looking at now. Because when I started recording my off-air episodes back on my beta cassettes all those years ago, the first episode was Robots of Death. So I had that wooden TARDIS interior, and was a little bit disappointed when a couple of stories later the white one came back. But yeah. I've always loved that. I've loved the color of it, the darker. Yeah, I like the darker interior. Mind you, I can't imagine it in the black and white era. There's something different about when it's in black and white.
I know. I see why you're saying it. I can see why. I mean, I love the size of that, but you need to fill it. Whereas the one you're liking is probably just a bit smaller, but they've filled it. The lighting is.
It's got desks. It's got bookshelves, hat stand. A globe. Is that a globe over there? I can see. It's nice.
Okay,
it's nice. I like it.
Now, what you like dark? What about that?
That's too much like Jody's.
I mean, you want it. You kind of want it space age as well, don't you? It's like, what about this one?
Yeah, but you can't live in that. How can you live in that?
So you've got your upstairs and downstairs, a bit like Capaldi did, and you've got a bit of the Gothic, haven't you? I mean, that's got a bit of. You've got your wood there, Dwayne. You've got your slightly.
Yeah, but where's this? You've got to have the central console. That's what you need to have right in the center. Yep. Unless it's off to the side there.
Yeah, I wonder if it's that. What about that one then? You've got a view of the space. I like.
You've got a kind of both there. You've got the big sort of open monitor there, looking out into the stars, and then you've got the old bookcase as well, and the carpets. So
I do like that floating console.
Yeah, going to say the hovering console.
Yeah.
Nice.
I know that's trickier to do than having, but yeah, I'll see what the thread thinks in a minute. And yeah, you can tell me your favorite TARDIS interior. I'm just provoking you with some of these. Look at that one.
Man, these are someone's put a lot of work into these.
They do. I mean, I don't know if this one's got a water feature at the bottom or it's just glass. But I mean,
is it the Doctor's wife?
It looks like yeah. I think that we've got a feminized Doctor's.
So Idris from that Smith episode.
Yeah. You've got chandeliers. You've got lots of kind of spacey kind of windows. You've got the upper gallery. Did you like the upper gallery with Capaldi's era? That I didn't feel it was used.
I don't think any of the TARDIS are used enough in the new series.
Yes, well, there you go. Now, so is it making you love it even more? You've got your rug there, Dwayne.
Yeah, there it is.
It was lovely, I have to say.
Yeah,
maybe less candles, but we were saying when we did our review of the movie, people loved that kind of the clunkiness of the TARDIS console where you almost manually had to change the dates and stuff. It had that very tactile feel to it.
I must admit, I didn't like. Well, it's not that I thought it was beautifully done, but I didn't like how it was like. It was very a literal, like English time machine with like, alphanumeric controls and things that were clearly like, like it's earthbound. It didn't make sense to me. It's like, why would you have literal spinning locations that are all Earth locations?
Yeah,
and dates and times that are in English. I was expecting Gallifreyan.
I didn't like how they did the cloister room and the Eye of Harmony. I'd like that to be, if they did another Castrovalva, can that please be jettisoned, please? So let's have a quick look at the thread before we, Doctor Who fans, we know what we like. Doctor How, I think Matt Smith's TARDIS felt like it did steampunk right. Yeah, that's the first one, isn't it? Although there might have been a bit too much glass and not enough books, hat stands, blah, blah, blah. The hovering console is based on the season 27 console room, says PB Props. I do think that look to me really does just grab my eye, the hovering console. I'll get to it in a minute. Hunter Callan, the interior should be a river with the console floating. What about electrics? No, sorry. Yeah. I know what you mean. This one has a lot of sofa cushions. It would turn on JD Vance. I like the TARDIS interior to be cozy and not too massive like the new one. If you're going to make a big one like that, as we've all said, number one, the shooty Doctor's hardly been in that TARDIS, really. We haven't really used the jukebox either. It seems to be just there. I think the Maestro, it linked with that a little bit. Triple Jazz, I felt Smith's first TARDIS suited his character. It is actually one of my secret pleasures, that one, I must admit. Hunter Callan, I liked the last vestige of the console in Inferno as it was literally falling apart. I struggled with that, that when he had the whole
console out.
Yeah, I'm thinking, yeah.
Obviously, the whole gag of like launch, being able to launch the console on its own.
Yeah. I know what they were doing, but that wasn't me. Luckily, I missed that era, so when I watch it back, I don't see it as me. McCoy's final design was very nice, although the step up is a tripping hazard for actors. It's a fire hazard. Too many candles, but I did like the furnishings. Crimpling, good to see you. I wouldn't want to be the one to dust that. Now you're starting to sound like the shooty Doctor. He says that to Rogue. You go and see somebody else's spaceship and you're saying, get your Mr. Sheen out. Tickled by Big Speed. Did the Eye of Harmony ever come up again? I don't want it to. It's
supposed to be on Gallifrey, because it's the whole thing about Rassilon and Omega, and then bringing it there and putting it in stasis, isn't it? A state that doesn't flux nor wither or change its state.
I didn't get
wasn't the TV movie originally supposed to be set on Gallifrey? So
Yes.
maybe that was
Yeah.
an element that they had in the original idea that they wanted to continue using. So I always had a bit of an issue with it. So that's not where the Eye of Harmony is supposed to be.
No.
Yeah,
And
it's
I've,
not meant to
if
be
it's
in
a-
your TARDIS.
Yeah. Mm.
and I've got the
But-
TARDIS technical manual somewhere. You know, we all got that book. And I'm sorry, but the Eye of Harmony is not the energy source or anything to do with the TARDIS. They've now retconned that. Boomer Doug, one of the few things I like about the new series is the current TARDIS, but it needs to be filled with antique furniture and artifacts. That's it. Yes, there you go. Shows it again. That's it.
Definitely, the Eye of Harmony.
Show us the Eye of
is
Harmony,
not
would
a-
you?
Yes.
Not,
page
it's not
is-
here.
It's
not
not there. It's a lie. It's a myth.
There's a
Oh,
toolkit,
God. Yeah, that's. I mean,
exact measurements, but definitely no Eye of Harmony
No.
in the TARDIS.
I knew it. I knew it. They're lying to us. That's got to stop. So there you go. Well, we've gone around the houses. There's a reason why we've gone around the houses. Part of it was to say hello to our Aussie cousins, but partly, obviously, to discuss Sirens of Audio's big events. And so, if you want to do one more shout out, Dwayne, about your big events coming up in September and November, isn't it?
Yeah, so for those in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, you'll get a chance to see Katy and Frazer, either one or the other. November, we've got Sylvester McCoy for a few of the weekends there in Melbourne. Where is he? Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Hobart. And Janet is going to be joining him for the Melbourne and Adelaide shows. For now, there could be more. We never know. Cross our fingers.
Yep. Get booking.
So if you can check, get over to sirensofaudio.com and all the info and links are available there on that page.
Magic. So there you go. That was the Thursday that was, and that looks like a hell of an event. And as you saw, I've seen some of those people recently, and they are good value. So thanks for joining us in the thread. Thank for joining us tonight, Dwayne and Dan. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And
No worries.
I think it's time to get on with another day. See you later, lads. See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.